There's something in my heart as it relates to the move of God that I can't shake. When I was first saved back in 1973, 37 years ago, there was a movement going on that we called it in America the Jesus People movement. And I'm a product of that revival, of that move of God. But I can also tell you that when I got saved, within 3 weeks I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and it altered and changed my whole perspective about what God could do in the day in which we lived. And I used to pray a prayer back at that time, and the prayer was, God, whatever you're going to be doing in the earth in the days that lie ahead, I want to be right in the middle of what you're doing. I don't ever want to be on the fringes. I want to be in the middle. And I can remember when I was first saved, I used to enjoy another white preacher that I thought was black, because I only heard him on the radio, and then I went to one of his tent meetings and found out he was a white guy. And became a dear friend of mine years later. He was one of my heroes, and then later became one of my dearest friends. But R.W. Schambach taught me how to preach just by listening to him on the radio. But when I went to one of his tent meetings and I saw two things in those early days that changed my life. One was, there was a woman with a very large goiter on the side of her neck. And Schambach, like Smith Wigglesworth, doesn't care about propriety or anything. He walked up there and he smacked her right in the goiter. And I said, oh my, what kind of a lawsuit is he going to get now, you know? And the goiter disappeared. And the minute the goiter disappeared, there was a young man paralyzed in a wheelchair on the far end of the tent. Now, Schambach's tent used to be billed as the biggest gospel tent in the world. So it seated, I want to say back then, about 6,000, which was a pretty big tent. Not as big as some tents I've been in since then. But back then, and this young boy was at the far end of the tent. And when that woman got healed, he jumped out of that wheelchair, totally healed, and began to run around the tent. And for me, there's something about the power of God that I can't get enough of. What about you? And I sense that we are on the cusp, or perhaps on the beginnings of another great outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Never before has the kind of shaking been going on that we're seeing now. We would hear about shakings in a nation here or a nation there, or a nation here or a nation there. But the scale of the shaking is global now. There's an economic shaking. There's a psychological shaking. When 2001 came and went, the psyche of the nations was disturbed. 75% increase since 2001 in anxiety meds, just in America alone. And of that 75%, most of it is male population. Prior to that, very few men in America, percentage-wise, were on anxiety meds. But now men are wrestling with anxiety and depression. And there's so much going on that's causing people to feel vulnerable and feel as if they don't even have a future. So they're doing their best to focus just on today, because today is so intense. I just need to get through it. And change is accelerating at a very rapid pace, so much so that the futurists that publish all their trends are saying that we are no longer in the information age. It's over. We're now in the shift age. And they're saying that this next decade is going to bring so much radical change that we're not going to recognize it unless we are able to manage the change with a certain sense of fluidity and just go with it. Well, you and I are the people of God. And the good news is that while a whole lot of other stuff may be shaking, we've received a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And we've also received a mandate that cannot be revoked. And because we've received a mandate, we've got a purpose. And because you've got a purpose, you've got a vision. And because you've got a vision, you have to have a dream. And if the dream is big enough, the facts don't count. Say, if the dream is big enough, the facts don't count. Now look with me in Genesis chapter 37 for a moment, and then we're going to jump over to the 45th chapter.